So can you really turn $500 into $520,367? You sure can, and this is how. But let me give you a quick backstory. So I was meeting with a client's son, and this son, he was 16 years old. He was ambitious. He was wanting to make some extra money. So he was out mowing lawns, doing some landscaping, and just hustling his butt off, doing what most of us don't do. You gotta work, people. You gotta work to earn some money. Take some lessons from the 16-year-old. He was out working his butt off, making extra money, and he wanted to invest, but he didn't know how. So he came to me because he wanted to invest because he didn't know how and he needed some help. And I wanted to show him how he could turn his $500 that he had saved into a potential fortune down the road. But the key thing with him and anyone else, if you haven't started investing, is you just have to start. And that's what I was showing him, how to start investing. So I showed him how he could take $500 and grow it to an astronomical amount in his eyes, and for a lot of you as well, into over $500,000, $520,000 to be specific. And this is exactly what I showed him. So let's take a look.
All right, so let's dive into the numbers. And if you want to see the numbers, there's actually a blog post that I wrote 2 years ago about this exact situation with this 16-year-old kid wanting to invest $500. It's on Forbes. It's also on my blog, Good Financial Sense. But if you want to check it out, here it is. So before I get into this, so what I'm showing here is that in my financial planning practice, we have a software program that has data from almost every single mutual fund that exists in the world. And we can go back in time and show how that investment would have grown over real life market conditions. And in this situation here, I use a mutual fund that was not that good. It was okay. It's what I would call an average mutual fund, a middle of the pack mutual fund. And the reason I do that is because I don't want to show the best mutual fund. I don't want to show the worst mutual fund, but I just want to show something in the middle that just kind of shows what it looks like to grow over time. So that's what we're looking at here. And just so I could show a time period, we're going back to 1970, way back in time before I was alive, but just to show how the growth of this mutual fund, of this $500 investment would grow over time. So that is what we are looking at, just to kind of preface, how these numbers look. So the first thing that you're going to see is this. So here we're showing we got $500. We're investing into the mutual fund, getting started. There's some transaction charges known as load that we don't really have to pay now. But anyway, in this case here, that's there. So $500, pay their commission to get started. And now we're going to see that growth over time. So 1970 invested $500. At the end of 1971, it's now up to $586. Now, most of you are thinking, yeah, that's good. I made $86 off my $500 investment. It is, because when you think of percentage wise, the first year you made 5.15%, which you can see here. The second year you made 18.28%. So 18% return, which is phenomenal. But when you're starting with a small amount of money, $500, it doesn't seem like a lot. But if you made 18% off $100,000, so if you made $18,000 in a year, that's a lot of money. If you got $500,000, you make 18%. That's a lot of money, but it takes time for that to grow. So we keep going. At the end of 1972, it's up another 12%. So now we're up to $661. Woohoo! Yay! Keep going. And this is what I like to show this example. And this is kind of beyond the scope of what this video is supposed to be about, but just showing what happens if we have a bear market or if the market crashes. What does that look like? So in this case here, we started with 500. By the end of the third year, we're up to $661. At the end of 1973, so 4 years later, it was down 33.75% that year, and the value dropped to $438. Now, just stop and think about this right now. You started with $500. It grew to $661. Now it's down to 438. So now you're actually below what you started with. Most people here would freak out. And that's what most people do. And they cash out. They don't want to put any more money in. They put in cash, put it in the bank, whatever. What the smart investors do is they leave it alone, let it do its thing. But so what happens if you did that in this scenario? So 33%, we were down that year. The very next year, it's down another 28%. So now you're down to $311. Depressing. I know. It's sad. It's so sad. So once again, what do? Do you cash it out? Do you leave it alone? Do you add more money to it? In this situation here, we're just leaving it alone. Letting the $500, which is now $311, run its course. So by the end of 1975, it keeps growing. Now it had a great rebound year, up 51% that year to grow to $471. Now we're still not where we started, but we're closer. And remember, we're 5 years in the mix here. 5 years that we've put this money in, and we're still below what we started with. It's a long time. All right. Keep growing though. So at the end of 1979, now we're going for an entire decade. The $500 has now grown to $1,302. We had a 51% return, 29% return, 15% return, 21% return, and then another 51% return. So now that's what I'm talking about. And this is what makes people millionaires, especially when they're investing in the market for the long term, is just letting that money sit and grow. So now we're going out. This is over a 35-year period, $500. What has it grown to be? Almost $70,000 is what this has grown to be. Actually, we go a few more years out. $68,000 is what we have at the end. So this 16-year-old investing that money, $500, letting that sit until he is 61 years old, and he now has almost $70,000. That's huge, right? That's huge.
Okay, at this point, you're probably saying to yourself, Jeff, you told me you showed him how to turn $500 into $500,000. This isn't even close. You're at $70,000. You're about $400,000 shy, if I'm not mistaken. I get it. So here's the next step. Here's how I showed him how the magic really happens. If you don't know anything about compounding interest, let's take a look and have some fun.
All right, now let's look. How does this $500 investment grow to be over $500,000? We've seen it grow from 500 to almost 70,000. So that's fun. But how do we get to over $500,000? Well, this is what I showed him, and this is what blew his mind because it's doable. So he had the $500. He then, based on my recommendation, added an extra $25 per month every month. As long as he had it up until the age, 60, 61. So he's doing this over a 45-year period. So we started with 500 and we're adding $25 a month to it. That's it. And that's what we're showing here. So we started with 500. Here's the 25 a month, which ends up being $300 total per year is all we're adding to it. And by doing that one simple thing, his return, his $500 investment with an average return of just under 12%, 11.94%, had grown to be $520,367. That's how you do it. Now, the cool thing about this is that that's only $25 a month. What happens if it was $50 per month, $100 a month, $250 a month? Can you imagine how much bigger this would be? We're not talking $500,000. Now we're talking in the millions of dollars just by investing early. That's the big key here, right? He started early. He's 16, for God's sake, 16. He's starting investing. I mean, this is huge. And this is where most people get stuck because they just don't do it. So those are the numbers. That's what it looks like. $500,000 with $500 starting and an extra $25 a month.
And that's what I showed him. I showed him how to take his $500 he had saved by working his butt off, investing that money, and then adding a little bit on top of it to grow it to over $500,000. It blew his mind. And I love blowing people's minds when it comes to investing, especially when you see what compounding interest is all about. Now, if you're watching this, chances are you might be a skeptic and say, well, Jeff, you're showing over 10% return or 11% return. There's no way you're going to earn that in the stock market. Okay, I get it. Maybe the stock market is not always going to average that. But if it doesn't average 10 or 11% and you only make 8% or 7%, the whole point is to invest, is to do something. So if you're going to be a skeptic and just say, oh, those returns aren't they're not real, that's not possible. You can't make those returns in the stock market anymore. It's a different stock market. If that's your stance, then don't do anything. Continue to whine and complain and then gripe about why you don't have any money, why you're broke.
Lisa wants to know if we want to get a drink later.
Maybe if it's happy hour. I'm so broke.
I know. I can't even afford Whole Foods. I have to shop at Trader Joe's.
The only apartment that I could afford is 3 buses and 2 hours away, but this is the only job I could get. I'm so broke.
Look at my phone.
Is that a 6 Plus?
Yeah, I dropped it when I did Molly at that music festival in the desert that we all flew to. I'm just too broke to fix it.
Because here's what I would argue. Even if I'm half wrong, meaning that instead of having $500,000, he only had $250,000. Do you get that? Only $250,000, only $250,000. You still have more than 90% of everybody else that didn't invest a dime. And the other thing, the mutual fund that I'm using in this scenario here, it's even not that good of a mutual fund. It's an okay mutual fund. There are a lot of other better mutual funds out there or other investments, whether you're doing ETFs, stocks, cryptocurrencies, whatever you want to invest into, there are other things that you can invest to grow your small investment today into a much bigger amount later on. The point is, like this 16-year-old, you have to do something. You must start investing into something. I don't care what it is. No more excuses. You have to do something. You have to invest. Start today, invest that money, and let's grow it, baby. Let's see that money grow. This is Jeff Rose, Good Financial Sense. Peace. And the other thing is that the mutual fund that I'm using in this scenario here, okay, at this point, you're probably wondering, Jeff, you said you're gonna show me how you, and that's what I showed.